Hey guys, welcome to Reconstructing Cave Story. In this episode, we're going to be working on experience text, which is very similar to our damage text, except it's white and it talks about our experience. So the problem we're facing is how much experience did I just collect? I have no idea because there's no number telling me how much experience I collected. So our solution is going to be a floating number, which is just like our damage text, and oh, that means we need to change our damage text to a floating number. That's not so bad. Floating number of damage, and experience text is going to be a floating number of experience. And what about this other method we have in here called set damage? Well, let's actually call that add value because, we're not just setting, we're adding. So that's not so bad. It's just a small refactor. And then for experience, we're going to need to be able to update, or we're going to need to update set position and draw ourselves because we don't have a damage texts class to do it for us and manage it for us, so we're going to have to do it as a player ourselves. So the first step we're going to do is just rename the files. Damage text goes to floating number because we're going to use it for both damage text and experience text. Then damage text, the constructor, is going to be called floating number. Then we'll change set damage to add value, and finally we will take in a floating or a number type, which will be either a damage or experience. And then finally, this is kind of unrelated, but what about damage to our experience? We lose some experience whenever we take damage. And all right, let's implement that too. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with experience text, but this is a good enough place to put it. So yeah, let's get started by renaming the files. Alright, so to rename the files, let's go into the terminal, and I'm just going to use the move command, which is the Linux command to rename files. So cave story source DamageText.h, and this will become cave story source FloatingNumber.h. And the same thing except with cc. And then we need to rename all of our pound includes. So I can do this with sed, which is a find and replace tool. So sed-i, and the string we're going to replace is damage text. We need to escape the .h, and then we want to replace it with floating number.h. So this will just go through and replace every instance of damage text.h with floating number.h. And we want to do this to all files in cave story source. So that should rename everything. I'm going to make clean and make just to make sure that everything's still building, and it should be. And then we'll have finished step 1. I'm going to reload Vim because I have some stuff that needs reloading. So let's look at our next step, which is to convert damage text to a floating number. So to do this, let's start in DamageText.h. Just kidding, let's start in FloatingNumber.h because we just renamed it. And we're going to start with the header guards, which is FloatingNumber.h. That should be no problem. Let's also change our damage text, all instances of damage text with floating number. So we're going to rename the struct in the constructor. So let's rename this to floating number, which, by the way, I just used sed down here. So I just used the command line version a minute ago, and you just saw me use the Vim version a second ago. So that's what's going on there. So now I'm in floatingnumber.cc, and I'm going to rename damage text with floating number. Again, very quick, very easy with sed. And this isn't the only place we need to rename it because we have places that are calling it and using it. So there's lots of places that we need to change. So I'm going to use a tool called cscope. And cscope, I can find a symbol, and the symbol I want to find is damage text. And I want to replace all instances of damage text. So this is going to find all instances of damage text. It's kind of like doing a find all in Visual Studio. I think I might have done that once or twice. So I can also alternatively just type CSF for find, S for symbol, and damage text. So yeah, I'll do it that way. So the first one is in DamageText.h, as you can see here. It's line 10. So I'll press 1 to get those. Now we can just replace those with floating number. again using sed. So there's lots of tools to help with refactoring in Vim, and I mean pretty much every software package has tools to help refactoring. You just got to find them. So the next one is in damageable.h, as you can see. So I press 1, replace, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I want to replace those with floating number, and that's done. It'll take a little bit of time saving because while I'm doing a bunch of stuff, like I'm rebuilding the cscope database and the ctags database, and Syntactic is running and all that kind of stuff, and that goes slowly. Normally it's pretty fast, but when I'm recording it goes kind of slowly, so you're going to see a little bit of slowdown during save times. So next is in firstcavebat.h. We'll replace DamageText with floating number. That's not what I meant to do again, floating number. And then the next thing I want to do is, I think the next one was in player.h. Yeah, player.h. And firstcavebat.cc is next. So I guess I could have done it while I was there. So let's change those first. And then player.cc as well. We'll change DamageText to floating number in the constructor call. I'm going to leave player.cc open because we're doing a constructor call here, and we'll need to change that later when we add in our number type. So the next one is going to be in firstcavebat.cc, which I will also leave this one open because, again, it's a constructor call. So let's change it to floating number. And actually, instead of doing, I'm going to reorder this because I think this will be easier. So I'm going to do the floating number takes in a number type and then change set damage to add value. I mean, both of them will work, but I'm going to build and make sure that this is running as is now. So I'll just type to make. I'm not actually going to run it because if it's building, I'm sure it's working. So the next thing I need to do is go into floatingnumber.h and change the constructor, and it's going to take in an enum. I'm not going to use a default value because default values have been confusing for me, and actually having the timer take in a default value has been kind of biting me, so I think I might remove that default value, but we'll see. So floating number, it's going to need to take in a number type, which is either going to be damage or experience, and we'll just have it take it in here. So number type, and we'll need to store it too. So number type, we can make it const because it won't change. And then let's open up floatingnumber.cc and change the definition here. So that didn't work. Oh well. Go to floating number, and we'll use number type. I will reorganize these so you can see them on screen. That would be helpful, right? And we will initialize type, the new variable I created with type. And we're going to need to use this type too. But before I do that, I will make sure that we call floating number with the number type we want to use. So this, in the case of player, is going to be number type damage. Oops, floating number damage. And the same thing for our bat.cc, it's going to be floating number damage. So I'm going to make, just to make sure that this is working, I should get a warning about not using this type variable, but I'm okay with a warning for now because we're about to fix that up. I just want to make sure everything is still compiling. Yep, see warning, type's not used, and it all compiled correctly. So let's go down and actually use it, and it'll be in the draw method, and we want to use one of two sprites. So we only want to draw a damage number if our type is actually equal to damage. Otherwise, we'll want to draw an experience number, and that's going to be the only difference between those two types. So else, I mean, I could do this in a ternary, but it ends up using the copy constructor, storing it in a temporary sprite, and that's like slightly less efficient, and it's just like such a dumb reason not to do it, but I'm going to do it this way anyway. So I'll just change this to experience number. I mean, the advantage is you don't have to pass graphics and damage into two different. No, I mean the advantage is you don't have to change this or duplicate this draw centered call, but I don't know if I care enough right now. I mean, in other situations I would care, but one line duplicated like this in such close quarters is not a big deal. What are you doing? This is going pretty slow. There we go. All right. So we now have floating number for a number type. Now let's rename set damage to be add value. So we will change this from add value, int value, and we are not going to use this damage anymore either. So we'll change this damage to int value. It used to be damage HP, now it's int value. So let's change all instances of damage to value. And then up here in set damage, we will want to rename this to add value, int value, and we'll want to rename damage, the local variable, to value. And that should take care of that, except we also need to find all instances where it's being used, where we're calling set damage. So I'm going to use cscope again, CSFS, so find symbol, set damage, and it's in first cave bat.h. We'll go there, and instead of calling set damage, we'll call it add value, same damage value that we're adding though. And then the next one is in player.cc set damage, so we'll call add value instead. Now I think we have completely finished our refactoring. So we've changed set damage to add value. So I'm going to build and run and just make sure everything is still working right, just to make sure everything's still working right. I'm taking damage, the bat's taking damage, and everything is happy. So the next thing we need to do is worry about taking damage to our experience. And actually viewing our experience. Like we'll create an experience number next. So to do this, let's go into player.h. And right below our damage text, we'll create a floating number. It'll be on the stack. So floating number, now let's call it experience text. And we'll need to do a few things with it, initialize it, update it, set value, or set position, and all that jazz. Experience text. And it's going to be a floating number experience. So let's start with updating it. We'll update it after we've updated X and Y, so it'll be up to date with the player position. So we'll do experience text dot update, giving it elapsed time. Actually, doesn't matter when we update it. It just matters when we set its position. Experience text dot set position, and we'll make sure to set it at center X and center Y of the player because that's what set position demands of us. And then finally we need to draw it. Let's draw it in draw HUD. So we'll draw it before everything like the health HUD and the experience HUD get drawn, but we don't want it to flash, so we need to draw it before the if statement. So we'll do experience text dot draw, giving it graphics. And then finally, one more thing we need to do is we need to be able to add value to it. Otherwise, it'll just never get updated. So let's go down to collect pickup. And if we collect some experience, we need to experience text dot add value and pickup dot value. All right, so now we can build and run and test it, but we don't have any experience. So let's create some experience in our game. So let's go to game CC, and just up here, after we've initialized everything, let's just create some pickups. So let's do pickups dot add boost shared pointer pickup new power Dorito pickup. And we'll need to pass it graphics, and then we'll just spit them out of the center of the bat, so bat. And then let's make a medium for fun. So power Dorito pickup medium. Let's make a few of them. I could put this in a for loop, but you know, I'm going to delete this by the end of the episode, so I don't want to put them in a for loop. Gosh dang it. Yeah, heck, why not? For int I equals 0, I is less than, let's make 3 of them, plus plus I, and we'll just spit them all out. So now we can build and run, and we should be able to test this. I did mean elapsed time in milliseconds. How did you know? Now we can build and run. So collect 5, 10, 15, sweet. Let's try a couple more things, make sure it gets reset. Oh, well, it stops rising, which is cool. So they all add together. Let's reset it. Okay, another time is 5, 10. Okay, great, it's working. So there's one more thing I want to do in this episode, which is to have our experience take damage. So let's go to PolarStar.h and create a void damage experience method. And it'll take in an amount of experience to do damage by. I'll implement it in the CC file. I don't think it matters, because eventually I'm going to make this a virtual method so we can implement it with more than one gun, but don't worry about that now. So down here below collect experience, I'll implement damage experience, PolarStar. And then we'll just do current experience is equal to the standard max, because we don't want to go below 0, of current experience minus experience. And that's just a nice method that we now have to damage our experience. So let's go into PolarStar.cc or player.cc and actually call it. So inside of take damage, right here, we can also remember to damage our PolarStar. So PolarStar dot take damage experience, and I think the value is damage times 2, so it's 2 times the amount of health that we lose, so we lose twice as much experience as health. So we'll just call it with damage times 2. And I think that's all we need. So now we can build it and run it and make sure that we take some damage. So we should get 15 experience points, so minus 2 should put us at 13 experience points, and minus 2 more should put us at 11. And then on the very next level, or the very next damage, we should be at level 1 with 1 less than full capacity. Yep, so we're damaging the correct amount of experience now. So that concludes this episode. So thanks for watching, guys, and happy developing.